Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Pearlie Brewer, and I will be your host. Today's guests are Shirley Hickman, who is the Executive Director at the Association for Workplace Tragedy Family Support, Threads of Life, and Bill Stunt, who is the Board Chair from the Threads of Life organization. Welcome, folks. Glad to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you, Pearlie.
Thanks.
Let's start with Bill. Bill, if someone were to meet you and pick up one of your business cards that said that you are the board chair from the Threads of Life, and look up at you and say, well, hey, what do they do, Bill?
That's a good question. Thank you. Threads of Life, or the Association for Workplace Tragedy Family Support. It's a registered Canadian charity that helps families who've had the experience of having a tragedy, either a fatality, a life-altering injury, or occupational disease. It helps them, deal with the things that you go through when a family member has been affected, or you yourself has been affected. And we offer lots of different ways of supporting families who have been, involved with this workplace tragedy or illness or disease.
How long have you been around, Bill?
Curious.
The organization been around?
The organization is literally is 20 years old. This year is 20 years old, and just a couple of weeks ago we had a celebration in Toronto honoring that, and then maybe we can give you a link to. There's a video of that celebration. So it's been exactly 20 years.
Now, how big is your board, and who's on your board?
Our board right now consists of 9 people. Myself as the chair. The breaks down. We try to have a balance on our board of family members, people who've personally have been impacted, so that we have that emotional and that very direct connection, and the rest of the board members are community members who we bring on because they have some particular expertise that's germane to the organization. Helps us. Sometimes it's financial expertise, or fundraising expertise, human relations, or people that work in the health and safety industry. As I said, 9 members right now. We can have up to 10, but we're at 9 members right at this particular moment.
Okay. Now, Shirley, I hear you have a very rich history with the organization. Would you tell us about how you got involved initially with Threads of Life?
So in 1996, our son Tim went to work at an arena in London, Ontario, and Tim didn't come home. He was 20 years old. He worked part-time at the arena, and he went to college full-time. Wasn't quite sure what he was going to do, but when you get that sudden phone call of a family member not coming home, your world just gets turned upside down. And there was no place for us to find out who was going to provide us with information, who was going to tell us what happened. And our family was so well supported by our friends, our community. We were local, involved with our church group, with our social network, and everything we needed for that first 6 months was provided. And then all of a sudden it's like, who's going to tell me? Who's going to tell us what happened? And you're thrown into this world of a legal system of investigations where they can't tell you very much about what happened. And you're thrown into a world that you never knew even existed. And so instead of turning my pain into anger, a virtual anger, I turned it into something that was going to be productive and positive. And I asked questions. And families started finding me. And so our family became involved with a network of health and safety organizations that were looking to make change to what was going to be required to lower the incidence of young workers being injured in the workplace, young workers dying in the workplace. And I worked with those health and safety organizations, with the Ministry of Labor, with the WCB, on campaigns that would ensure that young workers got the information, the education that they required. And one by one, families started reaching out and wanting to be on this committee that was looking at initiatives to decrease injuries. But we were also looking at how to support each other. And we became this community of support. And that's what Threads of Life is. It's a community of peer support. We provide opportunities for families to connect one-on-one with another family member. But we have a two-sided mission. Our mission is to support families affected by workplace tragedies, but it's also about creating a culture of awareness and prevention. So our family members take training on how to provide family support called Volunteer Family Guides, where we link a family member to an existing, to a new family member. We also train other family members to go out into workplaces and colleges and in the community to health and safety events to create and they share their very personal and unique story for the sake of prevention.
Now, there's a lot of dangers around hockey rinks. It's a Canadian pastime, hockey, as we know. What happened to your son?
So, like every other tragedy, there are multiple factors that come into place, right? In Tim's case, it was the ice resurfacing machine, commonly called a Zamboni. It was an Olympia, and it was a gasoline-driven Olympia. It had a metal tank holding gasoline, adjacent to a metal tank holding hot water. The hot water overheated the gasoline, and there were gasoline vapors that trailed across to the hot water heater. Now, the hot water heater was improperly installed. According to the blueprints, it was supposed to be 27 centimeters from the pilot light, 27 centimeters from the floor. Instead, it was the hot water heater was installed immediately on the floor. Gasoline vapors trailed over to the hot water heater. Tim came into the service room at the exact same moment that there was a flashback explosion at the machine. So a combination of some errors on the plumber's part who installed incorrectly, the manufacturer who had never had the machine looked at from a design perspective, that all came out in the legal system. Even though there had been prior explosions, the manufacturer hadn't looked at what caused those explosions, hadn't made modifications on the machine, and so a purely preventable tragedy.
Better say it. So from a point of view of the organization, how are you structured? Do you have a very big staff? How do you actually operate, funding, and so on?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting question because most people would say that, Canada's a very big country. And we all know the number of tragedies that are happening each and every year. So how is Threads of Life supporting those families? Well, we have 15 staff located across the country. Now, that's not very many staff to look after hundreds of family members and also to be part of the prevention system. So we have a network of volunteers. We have over 350 actively engaged volunteers. But beyond that, we have a network of employers and health and safety groups, such as your organization, right? Safety Services New Brunswick. You partner with us on Steps for Life. You create that awareness that is part of the need for awareness. And so our funding comes from Steps for Life, our only fundraiser. It comes from government grants. It comes from sponsorship of corporations that support and believe in the mission of Threads of Life, that twofold mission to support families and to be part of awareness. So we are broad-based funded, and we keep on doing a lot of good for a lot of people.
Bill, what do you see as some of the major challenges that Shirley would be facing and her staff across Canada? And What do you see as your board's role in helping to make her job easier and to help her succeed in what she's trying to achieve?
Well, the board of directors for Threads of Life is basically, it's more of a governance model than an operation or a practical model. We basically, help with reviewing the yearly plan, the strategic development. We obviously are shepherds of the finances of the organization. And as I say, a few of our members are actively involved in the health and safety industry or in the governmental side of it. And so there's that kind of expertise and knowledge and business acumen is what we provide. The board of directors directly provides to the staff. But as I said, we have that family member component. So there's also a very strong, maybe more so than some boards, a very, very strong commitment from the board members to both the support side, to offer thoughtful we don't give direction, but thoughtful consideration about the support side, but also on the practical side of the awareness side of how to reach out to people and make them aware. And I would say it's the challenge, and it's a challenge for any organization, but when you consider the scope of the issues that Threads of Life deals with and the size of the country, that's probably the biggest challenge. But we've, under Shirley's direction, grown at a very steady, thoughtful pace, never taking on more than we can feel confident in delivering. So it's been an evolutionary process to the point now where we have 15 staff. When I joined the organization, there was I think 2 part-time staff. It was a bare bones organization when I first encountered it, and it's been awesome and a privilege to have watched it grow to what it is now. So I think just the board of directors is there to offer considered thoughts and not specific direction, but just sort of wise counsel, I would say.
Now, a couple questions for you, Shirley. The first one being a scenario where a worker is involved in a workplace accident and loses a hand and arm. What kind of support can they expect, and how can they get that support from?
Yeah, so Percy, when workers lose a limb, it's life altering, right? So it's going to change the course of their life forever, the course of their family's lives, right? Their hopes, their dreams. And so Threads of Life believes that every story is the worst story because it's your story. Mm-hmm. So how can Threads of Life support families who are living with life-altering injury or occupational disease? The same way we serve families who are living with a fatality. We provide that peer support. We provide them with opportunities to attend workshops that have healthy coping skills, so we can connect them to other families that have learned how to live with an injury or with an illness. But beyond the worker, we provide support to the families of those workers because the families' lives have changed forever too. And the wife doesn't want to complain about the husband who can't do the things he could do before, or the kids don't want to complain, but their lives have changed. The dad maybe can't play hockey with the kids the way that they used to be able to play hockey. And so Threads of Life provides those family members with that outlet where they can share with another family the frustrations of the medical system, of the legal system, of the compensation systems, right? And it's like they just know they're not alone, right? That's the biggest piece that Threads of Life can offer to anyone, worker, family member, is that they know they are not alone in their struggles.
Now, does the same support exist for families that have lost someone on the job?
Yeah, I could speak directly to that because that's how I became involved with the organization. My son Carl was killed at work back in 2004, and we became aware of Threads of Life through the WSIB in Ontario. My wife did, and reached out, and the organization provided a family support worker for my family, and that got us to, within not very many months, to attend a family forum, our first family forum, and it was a game changer for my family, because we were really we were broken human beings at that point, not knowing where to turn. All the things that Shirley spoke about with her son Tim, there was the company was charged, but we had no information because it was an ongoing. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in that in that situation, and we didn't know anything and really didn't know where to turn to. So I would say going to that first family forum and meeting people who had been through maybe not exactly what we'd gone through, but something very similar. It was immediately, there was just that connection, which was, a relief, and getting some information. I don't pretend we got all the answers. We probably never will, but we got going in a path that was more positive. But I would say, and speaking personally, and it's for quite a few of our members, the other thing the organization offered was an opportunity to do something, not just, be involved with yourself, and of course we were and still am, but to actually, turn that, as Shirley said, that anger into something positive, try to do something. And she had the vision to start the organization. And in that, as that organization developed, one of the mechanisms that we use for outreach is to become to become a speaker, to join the Speakers Bureau and go out and speak to schools, go out and speak to industry, in workplaces directly. You get to go out and say hard things to people, and it's empowering. I find it very empowering. It's very difficult, but I feel like I have a voice now. I didn't have a voice before. I can go out and speak about it. And it's not just the Speakers Bureau. We have, as Shirley said, currently 350 active volunteers. Every one of those people is not just offering support, but they're actually offering advocacy or opportunities for advocacy. And I think that's that two-pronged mission and vision of the organization is what really attracts me, and it's what's kept me involved.
Now, I know it's difficult to share, but would you mind sharing your story, Bill, as to what happened to your son?
Sure. My son Carl, he was a video editor. I worked in broadcasting. My son followed in my footsteps to a certain extent. He was a video editor for a sports network. Good worker, hard worker, always had a job ever since he was 15 or 16 years old. But when he was 24, he and two of his friends decided that they did this long term vision of spending a winter in the Rocky Mountains. They were all avid skiers, and the skiing obviously is much better there than it is in Ontario. And so they left their jobs, took a leave of absence, and went out to Alberta. And to finance themselves there, Carl got a job working at the ski lift at the Sunshine Village in Banff. And he worked all through the winter as a lift operator. In the summer, they kept him on as an assistant to a maintenance crew. And a long story short, he was out with a maintenance crew working on what they call a maintenance gondola. They take down the normal chairs and put up a maintenance gondola. It's basically a cage with a platform on top. And they were stuck on the hill for a period of time with no lift operator to move them at the end of the day. And when the lift operator finally came, she brought the car into the station, and Carl was still up on top of the cage. They forgot he was there. And he received a catastrophic head injury when the cage got to the gondola station. So that's what happened to Carl. Yeah.
Shirley, and thank you, Bill, for sharing that with us. Shirley, do you have any idea how many individuals, families you've been able to help over the years?
That's a difficult question to answer, because some families come and then they attend the weekend family forums, and they participate in the Families Connect. Or some families only want to participate in Steps for Life annually. Some families only want to get the newsletter because they want to know that they're not alone and they haven't been forgotten. Others want the one-on-one family peer support. Others become involved with the Speakers Bureau. So how many have we totally served? Because some families obviously find that services are good for a number of years and then they go away. We have a reach within, we have the primary contact, but we also know that within that family, we're reaching many other other family members that we're really unable to count. But we believe we're currently actively serving about 3,600 family members currently at this moment in time.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot of support to a lot of folks that badly need it.
Yeah.
And we know there's much more that can be done, because we also know that we're not reaching all families that may benefit by the services of Threads of Life. We know Threads of Life is not for everybody. No organization ever is. But we do know, and we count on, Ministries of Labor, the WCBs, people like you with your podcast, employer groups, those that are working in health and safety, to make sure that anyone who may benefit by the peer support programs are aware that Threads of Life is here for them. We had a family connect with us about a year ago. Their son died 20 years ago. And that family attends the Families Connect monthly workshop every month. And what the dad has told us more than once, and is willing to share a lot about his son now, he said, 20 years ago, I had to park my grief. I knew I was parking my grief. I had to go to work. I had to pay the bills. I had to take care of my younger children. He was the child who died was the oldest of several children. He said, I didn't have time. I didn't have time to deal with my grief. Now all my kids are on their own, and this is my time. And he and his wife attend the monthly Families Connect workshop every month, and they contribute. And you think, there's no time limit on grief.
Oh. Your Speakers Bureau, Bill, I'll ask you this one. How many folks would you have involved in your Speakers Bureau, and what are you attempting to achieve in having that outreach service?
The actual number, maybe Shirley, you might know the actual number, but we have
So I think we have currently about 75 trained family members who are actively members of the Speakers Bureau.
That was the first volunteer position I took with the Threads of Life. Actually, it was not very long after that first family forum, and I heard someone speak, and I thought, boy, that's powerful. If I could do that, I think I could. That would make me feel better if I could go out and tell my story and know that I had an effect and made people think a little bit differently about safety. So the organization, we have, as I say, 70 some odd speakers we get training for it. We're not just speaking off the cuff. We prepare ourselves. We have slide presentations. It's not, it's done very professionally, but it's very emotional, and you hear our speakers speak. It's very impactful. And I find, I get, the Speakers Bureau, the person who runs it will give you a call and say there's a, opportunity to speak at such and such an event, or it's often at a health and safety meeting. That's, I would say, most of the talks I've given are at, the company will make our presentation from our Speakers Bureau part of a health and safety meeting. And it can be anywhere from, 10 to a couple hundred, 300, 400 people, depending on the size of the last one I did was to several hundred people. You get up and stand up in front of people and tell them the story. I gave you a condensed version. Shirley gave you a condensed version. We're going into a little bit more detail and sort of talk about it, and then really try to frame it, so that people are listening. What can you do to make sure this doesn't happen in your workplace? So we're always, putting that lens back, giving people the opportunity to think about it. I don't want to say shock them into thinking about it, but the stories are impactful. They're tragic stories, and people, hear them, and hopefully, what we believe, even if it's only for a couple of weeks after they hear you, or for a period of time, or maybe it's forever, think a little bit more carefully, and we encourage them not just think about themselves, but to really think about their coworkers, especially the young workers, because both Shirley and I's family members were young men, early in their careers, or early in their work life history. And those, as you know from statistics, are the most vulnerable people in the workplace for all kinds of different reasons. And I always make that a big focus of my talks. So I've heard many of the speakers from the Bureau, and they're all very good. Everybody's story is different. They all have a different slant on it, but the effect is the same, I think, and the intent is the same to get people thinking more directly and more concretely about keeping themselves and their coworkers safe.
For folks that might be, go ahead, Shirley.
And the Speakers Bureau isn't meant to be a woe is me story. It's not about, we're not looking for pity, right? We're looking for, so it's so Bill will talk about who Carl was, what he liked to do in his life, what he was thinking he was going to do in his career, how he mingled with his family. He will throw in some jokes about Carl and his brothers and Carl and his dad and his mom and the things they like to do as a family. Yeah. And then Bill will talk about, what happened, what could have been done for prevention. But it's not a woe is me story. It's a powerful story about a human being who went to work, didn't come home, or came home injured, or came home with an illness that has affected the family. And then the piece is, now what am I doing, right? So for Bill, it'd be, now I'm reaching out to you. But we always leave, no matter what the audience is, we always leave them with a call to action.
Yeah.
And Bill has alluded, right? So take care of your coworker as you would your best friend. If we can get everybody to think that message, right? Think of your coworker as your best friend. You wouldn't let your best friend drive drunk. So don't let your coworker work unsafe. Step in, step up, say something, right?
Yeah.
So it's that 3-part message, right? Of what happened, but who the person was, right? And when I'm standing there and I'm talking about a child who went and played hockey, was a goalie for his school and hockey and worked in an arena, natural fit for Tim. But I can speak to an audience of thousands, and probably almost everybody has either been in an arena or been part of hockey, or there's goalies out there. There's mental engagement, right? When you're standing before people as one human being to another, you engage people. And we will change the culture of workplace safety through our Speakers Bureau.
What's the best way for anyone, whether it's an injured worker or family or someone looking for a speaker from your Speakers Bureau, what's the easiest way for them to contact your organization?
So many families are referred to all the WCBs across Canada, the Ministries of Labour and the WCBs, the inspectors. They all have brochures and pamphlets, and they provide that information to families. We encourage them to provide that information several times to families over a course of years, because that first 6 months you're walking in so much grief and shock that you can't see, you can't hear, you can't comprehend anything. So it's like, provide it again, 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 2 years. And until the family says, well, I looked it up and it's not for me, that's good. So families find us that way. Families find us through social media or through a web search or through a friend or a neighbor or an employer. But that's how families across Canada find Threads of Life. We have no mechanism to reach out to families directly. Families reach out to us, the same as employer groups or those coordinating health and safety training days or conferences. They reach out to us.
Look, before we finish the podcast, I want to share a brief, story with you in that for one of my previous podcasts, I had the opportunity to spend some time with Lisa Gahan, who lost her son in Alberta in an industrial accident. And over the 5 hours, I don't know how many different times that Lisa mentioned that she really doesn't know what she would have done without Threads of Life and without your support. She continually talked about the person that she was paired with, a lady from Ontario that had lost her son out west. She talked about how she would sit by the phone every Wednesday when they would have their time set up, and their case, they set up a time for a call. And she would sit by the phone waiting. And to her, it meant everything. And certainly that speaks so well of your organization and what you're doing. Thank you. Keep doing it. You certainly provide an extremely important support for folks. Thank you very much for sharing your stories. I know that's always difficult, but I'm a big believer that people need to hear the stories behind the face, so to speak, so that they really truly understand what it's all about. Thank you very much for today, for being on our podcast with us today. For folks listening to our podcast, you can always provide us with suggestions, ideas for potential speakers, or any feedback. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at pearly@ssnb.ca. Thank you very much for listening, and for Bill and Shirley, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to spend with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Pearly.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.